Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention?
This is a Patriots Unfiltered emergency podcast.
And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
Presented by Toyota's official website for deals, buyatoyota.com.
Patriots Unfiltered!
All right. It is an emergency podcast. It's a Monday here at Gillette Stadium, and we had our Black Monday on Sunday night.
We did.
As everyone who is watching, listening already knows, Jerod Mayo was fired as head coach of the New England Patriots last night, approximately an hour after the game. It was a statement released by the Patriots, and we are here today because we're going to talk about that, but also we're going to lead you into a 1 p.m. live press conference with the owner, CEO of the team, Robert Kraft, who will be addressing the media, and I assume he's going to be taking questions. I don't want to say that for a fact, but I just assume that if he's going to be out there, he'll be fielding questions. So we'll take that live during this show, and then as soon as it wraps up, we'll go back to you and we'll take reaction from that.
And that, I think, will be the most interesting part, to see what Robert Kraft has to say, and, we'll react to all that. Still kind of, there's a suddenness to it that's surprising. I think it was sort of trending in that direction, that Mayo was going to get let go, but still it's just the suddenness, even now, 18 hours later or whatever it is, just kind of jarring. And, it was in the middle of our show, our post-game show last night, and just to hear the finality of it after one season is disappointing, but not terribly surprising. Just I guess the one surprising part is that it happened Sunday and not Monday, which I don't really get the difference. I know a lot of people have been like, it seems really cold. I don't. What are you going to do?
We've had some people say it's cold. Other people like the swiftness of it. I think people have different opinions on that. But, like we talked about it last night, it shouldn't come as too much of a shock, considering how things were going. We went into this wondering, okay, what does Jerod Mayo bring to the table? What is his superpower? And really there was no answer to that other than...
And what had gotten better, during the course of the year.
And then as we got into December, what improved? And there was no good answer to that either. And you add those two things up, and all the things that happen in the middle. And there's a saying, I think we've talked about it before, it's called fail fast. It mostly in the tech world they use that, but I think it applies here too. When you're pretty much certain that you made the wrong decision, it's better to fail fast and move on than to compound that decision.
I think that's a great point. I think your summation is really, really good too. Like what we went in thinking, and then we didn't really see. In other words, that superpower never manifested, and then nothing really came out that that improved along the way. I would say that he, in general, I think he had the respect of his players. I think that he did free up the locker room a little bit, 'cause I think there was a little bit of a toxic environment that had been created in the end of the Belichick era, but almost too much so. And there was maybe not enough of a control of that atmosphere in the locker room. So it's unfortunate. We don't like to see, and I know people, I was joking around. There's some of the shows that are on. I was like, I wonder if they're taking their victory laps, because I think there's some sort of perverse pleasure sometimes people get when I'm calling for, I'm tough. I'm calling for his job, and then he gets fired, and they're like, good. You're like, I've never really thought of it that way, even when I think a guy should lose a job.
Yeah.
I've never really taken a whole lot of joy in other people's demise.
Yeah.
But to each his own, I guess. I don't think it's a great day for the organization or anything like that, but I like your fail fast mantra.
Yeah.
I really like that, because I think there's too many times, Freddie, and it happens with quarterbacks and it happens with coaches, when you kind of know you don't have the guy. And you're like, well, we're going to play it out. We just saw this with Chicago, with Matt Eberflus. They kind of finished strong last year, with Justin Fields. They end up letting Justin Fields go. They take Caleb Williams. They stick it out with Eberflus, and then halfway through the year, they got to make a change. So I think he was failing, but maybe not fast enough for them to make a move.
Yeah.
And now Chicago's in the same boat.
Yeah, I mean, that said, there are some teams that are too fast. They don't give someone a chance to develop. But I think there are, and I think this is a situation of those times where it's pretty evident.
And
he wasn't ready.
Yeah.
And I said last night, I said, other than the Mayo and his family, the person who should be most sad about this whole thing is Robert Kraft, because good intentions aside,
it was on him.
He was put in a bad situation.
Yeah,
and he didn't have any support.
And Robert really, he went out on a limb. He believed he had a vision. He had a feeling. He talked about his gut feeling and all that. We don't have to relitigate that. But I agree with you. It was on Robert. So I do think he probably took it hard.
Yeah.
And I think that we said this last night. The easy thing to do would have been, it's 1 year. He'll get better. We believe in this. We're going to keep going.
Yep.
The hard thing to do is what they did.
Yeah.
And to say, I don't think it's going in the right direction. We're going to make a move. That's not easy to do. I give them a lot of credit for doing it.
Yeah. So nothing, it's official from the team, but there's a lot of reports out there that they've already requested interviews with Ben Johnson. And I guess you can do that now.
Yeah, because they won last night.
They won. They've got a bye, so they're not playing next week. So
that was Albert Breer, by the way, who I saw.
Yep.
The only one I saw on Twitter.
I think Pelissero had it too.
Okay.
So they'll do that, and I guess I already heard that they're going to be interviewing Mike Vrabel. That's no surprise. So those are two. And of course they're going to have more. Just for the Rooney Rule alone, they're going to have more. So those will be forthcoming, and we'll see how quickly they can move.
Yeah. I mean, I would expect there to be some activity, and I thought you made really good points last night, Fred, about the process and wanting to be thorough. I think you used the term you're looking for a guy with gravitas.
Yeah.
But just you want a thorough search, because you don't know what you don't know sometimes until you get it in your room or you have some kind of interview. I know they're not all in person nowadays. There's a lot of Zoom calls and whatnot, but I would hope that they get a good half dozen guys to sit down and have legitimate thorough interviews with, just if for nothing else, for a fact-finding mission.
Yeah, and I don't know how you do those interviews. I've heard some teams where they fly the guy in and they spend 2 days with him.
Yeah.
There's dinners, there's talks, there's touring, there's it's really a get-to-know type of thing, especially with a guy like Ben Johnson. He has no connections to this place. So, how do you in an interview find out, this is the guy? What are the questions that you ask? And to me, I think they're less about X's and O's. I assume he knows football. He's proven that. It's
structure.
It's structure. Who do you want to bring with you? What kind of defense? Who will you be your defensive coordinator? What structure do you want, or are you comfortable with up to the ownership? Things like that,
Yeah, I think all that structure, is really important, because it's how you want it to. I mean, are you comfortable being, under a GM, or do you want? You only want it this way, where you like the Belichick model.
Right.
You're the final say, or that kind of structure. What's your philosophies in terms of how you're going to handle your players and discipline and all that stuff that goes with it? The media. How you want to handle the media. How you play. How you want your players. There's a lot of different things.
Yeah.
You used to say all the time, the head coach is like the CEO of the organization,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
How do you intend to be the CEO?
I want to know, on the first day that you have your team meeting, what are you going to tell them? And I don't want to hear, I haven't really thought about that yet. Because if you thought about being a head coach, you should have thought about that.
Yeah.
This is the person I want to present as a leader. And if, like I said, if you've thought about being a head coach, you've thought about that first time that you address your team. And I want to hear what you want to say. What would
you say? Like if you were a head coach. I mean, I know it's a little early in the show here. What would you say? If you were going to
the first thing I do is I'd introduce myself. Here's where I've been. Here's what I've done.
Please allow myself to introduce.
Here's why I think
myself.
Here's why I can be a good head coach for you? And I would spell that out.
I like that.
And then once I'm done with that, then I get into here's what I expect from you. And I get into how I am going to run this team. And set the expectations for the team.
Yeah.
What I look for in a football player, what I look for in a teammate, those types of things. I just lay it out there as thoroughly as I can.
I'll tell you.
I mean,
you come up with a good offensive and defensive coordinator, Freddie, and you're in the mix.
Well,
I like your meeting.
No, but somebody, I was talking to somebody, and they said, coach needs to, they need to tell me like what's their process for communication, and sure, but at the end of the day, somebody's going to handle that for me. I want to find out what kind of leader is this guy. Is he going to get people to run through a wall for him? Is he somebody who, when he speaks, I believe what he's saying? It starts there.
Yeah.
All the other office management stuff, we can figure that out.
I agree with you.
But you got to have somebody who takes control of the room.
And you find that out by talking. Like the interview process is answering. Like that's not even a specific question.
Yeah.
Like you're telling me how you're going to command the room when you answer my questions.
Exactly. And you can say, well, you're looking for a Bill Parcells, Mike Vrabel type. Well, that's one way of doing it, but I also think a Mike McDaniel way is another way. He wows you with his intellect, his
quirkiness too.
He's his own guy. He's genuine. So there's not just one way to command the room, but you have to command the room. You have to be yourself, and who that person is has to resonate with a bunch of alpha males who, and I call them alphas, but they also want to believe that if I follow this guy, he's going to take me to the right place.
Yeah.
He knows what he's talking about, and I can trust him.
I totally agree. And I like the way you talk about the whole process, because I do think it's important that you would mention at the very beginning, I'm not going to care about X's and O's because I'm going to assume all these guys do. And I think the players know that too. Now, they might have systems and styles that they
want to know how am I going to be used.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a little different. But commanding, the whole thing with Steve Belichick, this reminds me of like when Jerod and Steve Belichick were under Bill, no one was the defensive coordinator, and a lot of people have thought, reported, opined that the reason for that was Steve was actually the defensive coordinator but couldn't really command the room. In meetings, Jerod had to be the one. Now, we know Jerod can.
Yeah.
We've all seen it.
Yeah.
We know he can command a room. So I do think it's important to have that element of communication and have there be no two ways about it. Like, you know it when you see it. You know the guy is commanding the room. You know the guy has the attention, the ear of the players. And I think in a lot of those things, Jerod did a good job of. I do think he had the players.
Yeah.
I just think that it wasn't enough.
It wasn't enough.
In the end.
You go back to Bill, and I've heard people say, Bill did everything. He thought of everything, but he didn't do everything. Don't underestimate the help that he got from guys like Ernie Adams, Dante, and Bears Najarian. Yeah. When Bill came, he brought Bears with him, and Bears was his chief of staff.
Right. And to your point about when you're interviewing the guy, right?
Who are you bringing with you?
Mike.
Do you
Ben,
have someone?
These are the two guys, right?
Yeah.
Vrabel and Ben Johnson. Ben, you've been an offensive coordinator. You've been a hot commodity. Who do you plan on bringing with you?
Yeah.
Your staff, offensive, defensive coordinator, but
who's your chief of staff?
Who's your chief of staff? Have you thought about that? Do you think that's important?
Right.
And whatnot. I think that there's a lot of those pieces that sort of fell through the cracks because Jerod's lack of experience.
Yeah. Yep. So that support staff is vitally important to these head coaches because there is so much to this job aside from getting ready for Sunday and drafting players and building your squad. There's just so much to the job. You cannot do it alone.
Yeah.
You need a good support staff. So I want to know, have you thought about that? Do you have people in mind? Where are they from? Why do you like them? What attributes do they have that are going to help you be the best head coach you can be. This isn't a 2-hour interview in my mind. This is at least, at minimum, a full day that you spend with the person, if not 2.
Could be a 2-dayer.
It could be a 2-day.
It's like when you cut the fingernail a little bit too
here.
short. Is it the time?
Deuce is here.
Is it the time?
Yeah, he came from the locker room.
Back from the locker room, what was the mood? Were the players friendly? Too bad none of them looked like Derrick Henry. Hey Mike, what was it like in the locker room? Hey Mike, what was it like in the locker room?
So today was sponsored by Hefty.
Yeah, it was. I think we maybe need a minor key version of that song because it was pretty morose in that locker room today.
Morose.
I've done it a few times.
Good word, Mike.
Yeah.
Blogger word.
Yeah, thank you. Heard from Dietrich Wise, who obviously very affable person, and it's tough. You can see him and Godshaw both spoke, and they both seemed really just frustrated and kind of hurt. And Dietrich Wise saying they didn't really have a chance to say goodbye to Jerod Mayo. They were kind of announced to the team this morning, but yesterday when it happened, he said there were whispers in the locker room. So I think they were a little frustrated by that. David Andrews a little bit more level-headed. I don't want to say level-headed. That's not the right word. Just a little bit more. I think he's been here maybe more. I don't know. He didn't seem quite as in a dark place as those guys did. But he did hint that he'd like to come back. He thinks so. He's going to still see how it goes. But I know that's a point we've been talking about. But yeah, just not a good vibe. You understand why in the locker room. I mean, it's never been a good vibe on this day. I remember 2019, my first year here. They were just coming off a somewhat surprising playoff loss and similar kind of vibe. But I don't know. It's just been such a bad, tough season. We've heard these guys over, and they've stayed positive, I think, in some regards. But this time it feels like season's over. Our coach is fired. It's tough. It's a tough day.
Been 24, 25 years since we got rid of a coach while the players were still here.
Yeah.
Because Belichick, the parting of ways, was after the team had left.
That's a good point.
You know, and so we haven't experienced this in a while. And I'm just wondering, you said they were a little bit upset or disappointed that they didn't get a chance to talk to Jerod or at least say goodbye to him. Do you think, was it just disappointment? Or were they upset about that?
I think they were a little upset, to be honest. I mean, especially Dietrich Wise. Both he and Godshaw and Andrews were the three scrums I could kind of hear. Christian Gonzalez talked. I was a little bit on the outskirts. I couldn't hear anything he was saying.
Even when you're next to him.
I know. But, yeah, it was just guys wearing their emotions on their sleeve today, and I think it's just been such a long season. I think you just see that kind of emotional letdown of, oh, this is really hard. And, I think we all go through it when you have, a tough string of work or whatever it is. There's just that letdown period. And it seemed like they were, firmly in it. It's packed. I mean, there's tons of media in there. The cameras are back in there. They haven't been in there all season. So it's, really hard to move around. Players are trying to move through the locker room with big bags of stuff. Some players not talking. Some players are, some players getting frustrated with all the people in the way. Wasn't a great vibe. I mean, I don't expect it to be, but. Big crew. Yeah, big crew.
I don't want to go down too much of a rabbit hole, but let's just say, for example, Vrabel is the next head coach. I think one of the challenges he's going to have on day one, once the team gets back, is who is pissed and who isn't. Mm-hmm. And am I looked at as a guy who was kind of in cahoots and, had the job before Jerod even left? Even if that's not true, how many players believe that?
Yeah.
So what am I walking into on day one?
Yeah. I mean, and
from a perception standpoint.
Some of, what I heard too was just, it was his first year. A lot of that kind of talk from the players of that. So, I think a lot of these players, they said they still had Jerod's back, and I think they still did have Jerod's back. And I think now you're seeing how it happened so suddenly for them. I think they were a little bit taken aback too. And
it's so funny, when these things are going on, in the middle of it, all year we've been hearing from the people, get rid of Jerod Mayo. The people that were okay with him, you didn't hear so much from. Now that he's gone, we hear a lot of people, it had to be done, this was the right thing. But now we're also starting to hear from the people who don't think it was fair.
Yeah.
Gronk was on Fox. He was saying it wasn't fair. Tony wasn't Tony Dungy, but
Jason
he
Garrett.
play to win the game.
Oh, Herm Edwards.
Herm Edwards said he was a little bit surprised and thought it was a little bit, So you're starting to hear from people now who, hey, it was a rookie head coach. What did you expect?
Yeah, and I get that. And I think what Mike talking about the players sort of being a little bit angry and disappointed they didn't get a chance to say, like, kind of speaks to the point that we were talking about. Like, I do think Jerod had the ear of the locker room.
Yeah.
I think he commanded the room, is the way Fred said it, Mike.
Yeah.
You need a guy that can get in there and immediately get the players' attention. I think he had that.
Yeah.
I think it was a lot of the other stuff that he lacked experience in that ultimately brought him down. But I understand why people, especially from afar, like if you're here every day and you're hearing if you're a national guy and you look and say, hey, Fred, I heard there's like some stuff going on in New England that, what was that thing about, the fans? Oh, well, like Jelani Tavai had mentioned that the fans weren't qualified to critique. If you're like a national guy, you'd be like, that's it?
Right.
Well, no, you don't really understand. It's like in a season's worth of, sort of missteps, and that just was the latest one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's not all these little things aren't the reason why Jerod Mayo was gone.
Yeah.
I think if you look at the totality, and certainly he's not gone because they went 4-13.
No.
Because I don't think that's a terribly surprising result for the season. I just think there was a lot of factors that came in, both on and off the field, and to your point that you started with, the lack of progress, the lack of hope in improvement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As you went on is probably why we are where we
Now,
are.
apparently, Wolf had an interview with somebody. He talked to somebody on record.
Henry McKenna.
And McKenna.
I did not.
And
read
one of the
this.
quotes that stood out to me was, it was the mea culpa. We have to do better. We didn't do enough. But he also said we expected more internal development when it came from the players.
Yeah.
So to me, that's an indictment on the coaches, right?
Specifically the wide
Certainly.
receivers. Specifically the wide receivers. I think Jalen Polk, he mentioned, he thought plug and play kind of player, and I think that's what we kind of saw this summer. So that's one area where we spend so much time trying to, is it the player? Did they draft the wrong player? Did they not develop the player? At least as far as this interview was concerned, they were pointing more towards the development.
And I made that comment last week. It's great, and I think the philosophy is very sound. Like to say, we want to be a draft and developing team, but you need to do both of those parts. And I find it impossible to believe that all of these failed draft picks that the Patriots had, let's just say over the last 5 years, none of them could play. I find that impossible to believe.
Yeah.
That they just whiffed so much on these draft picks that none of them could play. I think that at least some of these guys were let down by the lack of development. Now it's on the players too.
Right.
Like they have to
Sure.
develop on their own. But
Yeah.
I think that not all of these guys were put in a position
and I
to
find
succeed.
it equally hard to believe that any one team just gets lucky every year. No, there's probably more to it.
Right. There's more to the
Yeah.
Steelers year after year after
Right.
year finding gems for wide receivers in the 4th and 6th round. There's more to that than just the players that they're picking.
Right.
I think I've seen too from these last couple seasons is how things snowball. And I mean, I've seen it snowball in the bad direction. Certainly this year, I'm sure you guys could probably speak more towards snowballing in a good way. Like, it was things started going good and then you just start getting the breaks. And this was a team in a season across the board. They just couldn't seem to get the breaks and everything that seemed to go wrong went wrong, including, kind of winning the last game of the season. Like
when you're a bad team, you don't get the breaks.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's right. Like, because I think we've sat here a million times and be like, geez, remember when we, let's just go to one of the most famous ones, like we're on to Cincinnati. Like, it's hard to think back and just think the amount of sort of angst and despair that you had after getting buried in Kansas City in the Monday night game.
It was
You're
over.
Like, you're like 2-2. Is the window closed?
Yeah.
If Freddie Kirsch, window closed.
Got to get Garoppolo.
And it's easy to sit back and say, well, that was silly.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden you win one game, and Gronk is like half in tears talking about Brady. I wanted to make sure 12 looked like 12 again, and it snowballs, to use Mike's word, and all of a sudden you just roll through the season and you win another Super Bowl, and it's just a mere footnote. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's happened the other way.
Yeah, it has.
The last couple of years.
And I think that's, getting back to your earlier point, of when a new coach comes in here, How do you identify the right guys? How do you reestablish a winning culture? Because I think, especially Dietrich Wise, Jonathan Jones, we've mentioned their contracts are up, but these things, even the losing culture kind of snowballs. And now the majority of the guys that are leaders on this team, they don't know what it's like to win a playoff game.
And a lot of these guys are going to be back.
Yeah. So back to the locker room. A lot of media?
Tons of media.
Tons of media.
No,
You did
cameras
hear me ask
everywhere.
that, right?
So they allowed cameras in the actual locker room today?
Cameras are back in the actual locker room, and it just, to be honest, it kind of added to the stress of the day because you got a lot of players, a lot of bags, a lot of team staff pushing, carts through, loading things. I mean, it's a lot of traffic.
It's cold.
And it was a little cold. It's definitely cold out in the hallway. But you see what a complex day this is, not just for like, hey, we got to say goodbye to the players. It's like they're packing stuff up. They're getting ready to go. And I really feel for a lot of the lower level staffer kind of guys that we get to know, that we see, behind the scenes that, nobody sees, but just they're on uncertainty right now.
Sure.
They don't know what their future holds, and that's a hard place to be.
Did you see any coaches walking through or anything
I did.
like that?
Saw Brian Belichick came through, shook some hands, said hello to Evan. So he was present. And I don't think Ivan Fierce, I know he's not a coach anymore, but he was in there. But no, otherwise I didn't clock any of the other coaches.
I mean, you bring up Brian. That's going to be an interesting one.
I know.
What does he do? Does he go to North Carolina? Which
I would assume.
I wouldn't go. Like if I was him, man, chart your own course.
Yeah.
Stay in the NFL. Somebody will hire you. I think. I don't know. The safeties kind of fell apart at the end there, but. Yeah. Like for the most part, over the last couple of years, I think he's done a pretty good job back there.
I think he stayed here in New England because this is where his home is, and I know that he's got a young family, and I think it made all the sense in the world. But if he's not going to be back with the Patriots, now if he has an opportunity to be back with the Patriots, I would agree with you.
Yeah, but that's going to be up to the new coach,
right? And there's no guarantees there. So
Yeah.
my guess is he'll go back with North Carolina like Steve did.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised if Mike Pellegrino went with him.
Yeah.
Maybe Covington.
And how much? You mentioned support staff. There could be support staff.
Yeah.
Scouts. Other people that go to
and
North
there's
Carolina.
a lot of personnel guys, nutrition staff, training staff. I mean, there's a lot of different tentacles of the organization that was still here when Bill was here. I wouldn't be surprised if they had some.
It would be amazing to see. I mean, down the road when everything's hired is like just a chart of like, here's what the staff looked like in 2023. Here's what the staff looked like in 2024. Here's what it looked like in 2025. Just for size, experience of the different, what's the scouting? Did the scouting staff kind of stay the same? Does it change now? Like, how big of a wholesale change are we talking about this year? Are there going to be a lot of holdovers? Or are there not?
Well, and who was it? It might have been Breer, but a lot of people have used the word antiquated with how the Patriots are running things.
Where are the people? I think was the quote.
Because in the past, Bill did a lot, but like we talked about before you got here, he had help. He had Bears and he had Ernie and other people supporting him. But certainly it wasn't the big staff that a lot of these other teams have. I noticed that this year, when Jerod came in, there were some, let's say, upgrades in just, for example, travel.
Mm-hmm.
They instituted an app that I know a lot of other teams use. The person who brought it to us came from the Colts. And it organized the whole travel process for the players.
Yeah.
So in one app, it told them, here's your room, here's the flight, here's your seat, here's the meeting times at the hotel. Everything was in the app. And I even had access to it because
did you get that too?
Yeah. It was called Teamworks. It's something that a lot of teams use. And
what's gonna work? Teamwork.
2024 is the first time that this was used, but other teams have been using that for a few years now. But it's just one small example of there were a lot of things that we just kind of did because we'd always been doing it that way that could use an upgrade, a refreshing.
Fred, help me out because I know you were involved in this, but didn't we, when Matt Patricia came back to the organization, after leaving Detroit, didn't he, with your help, sort of institute some sort of program that helped with scouting?
Yeah,
like
well, that was
database
a long time ago.
It wasn't that long ago. It was like 4 or 5 years ago.
No, it was longer than that.
When Patricia originally came back from Detroit?
Yeah, but we started that before he came.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm thinking of something different then.
No, I mean, I'm not talking out of school here, but
No.
but
I think that's
our
talked
scouting database and system was really antiquated, and so I was asked to sit in on some meetings to bring in some of the developers that I had worked with in the past to bring this up to date. So there was.
So blame the drafting on Fred.
No,
Like you didn't slip the Lad McConkey thing while you were in there?
No, so there was a series of meetings where I kind of liaisoned this software development company, and the scouts were involved. Belichick was in one of the meetings and went to about 3 or 4 before Bill said, "Why is he here?" And I got kicked out. But they continued with it, and they did develop that system. I don't know, but it was more than 4 or 5 years ago, so I don't know what they're using today. Yeah.
Well, it seems like they've made some steps, including the new facility that's going to come in. But I would guess the hope would be that the new coach is going to come in who has been in other NFL organizations and will further push that along and bring, look, this is how we need to structure our scouting department now. And, when I was in place B, this is, how we manage things with the front office.
You take the things from the different places that you were that you thought worked, and
Right.
some of the things and this is my whole point of conduct a thorough search.
Yeah.
Because you never know what ideas might be hey, I never thought of doing it that way.
Gather information.
Which was a huge disadvantage for Jerod because, he
didn't have
kind
that
of saw how
experience.
Bill did it. And, maybe in hindsight, he could have said, geez, I could have used more help.
Well,
and
at
XYZ
Optum, we
things.
kind of like, oh, okay, like all he knew was here.
Yeah, no, I know, and
he was like a sheltered child.
I know.
That only knew
it
one.
was, I mean, we said it. It was a really tough task for him this year. I mean, I don't want to downplay that. He was given an opportunity and didn't make the most of it. But at the same time, I don't know how you can't look at it and be like, it was a really tough for him to try to thread that needle.
I feel real bad for him. I really do. But it is what it is. It had to be done.
Yeah,
it had to be
the
done.
NFL.
But if it's somebody like a Vrabel, he was here obviously as a player. Ohio State, so we saw how the college game worked a little bit. He was then he went over to Houston as the DC. Then he went to the Titans, and then this year he spent as a consultant with
Cleveland.
With Cleveland, and I guess it's reported that he focused on offense.
Yeah.
Like trying to learn.
Yeah, I think he spent like training camp with the offensive line and the season with tight ends, or maybe the other way around.
Yeah.
But he's trying. That to me was the thing that impressed me the most about what his season was. Sort of recognizing I'm considered to be a defensive coach, and some people are looking for more than that.
Yeah.
So I need to learn what I don't know.
Pants are going to be tight.
And he's a smart guy.
So like with Ben Johnson, who's the other guy that they have, that there's been tweets about the Patriots requesting, he's been basically on the offensive side.
Yep.
So what does he have in mind to help him with defense? Is he going to do like the Sean McVay,
Wade Phillips,
Kevin O'Connell kind of thing?
Yeah.
And I'm going to be head coach, but I'm going to run the offense, and I'm going to hire an experienced
Lou.
Yeah, Lou Anarumo is
speaking of Lions, what a gag job by the Vikings last night.
So
I was shocked that they didn't put up a.
I was
mean,
shocked
they got
that
into the red zone so many times and couldn't do anything.
And you know what? I thought Detroit played really, really well defensively, but that wasn't about Detroit's defense in the red zone. Like Darnold just didn't play well.
No, he did not.
He
play
missed
well.
a wide open Jefferson, like back-to-back plays, on one of those trips. And I thought, like the first time they get down there, like the idea to go for the fourth down, I didn't think made any sense. They could have had the lead as badly as they were playing if they just kicked field goals.
I know.
Yeah.
And, I don't want to get too
It was
diverted, but all this talk about
kind of a disappointing game.
Yeah,
I just
oh,
thought in
real
general.
disappointing.
But I give Detroit a lot of credit because I didn't think they could win a game like that.
Oh yeah,
With their defense playing so well. I thought there was only one way that Detroit can win now, and that's like in a shootout.
Yeah.
And they won with Aaron Glenn. Give him a lot of props.
But everybody
He
said,
was
"Oh,
great.
you got to sign Sam Dalton."
Oh, I still think that. I mean, he played badly.
I don't know. I think it's an open competition with him and McCarthy now.
Oh, no. I'm not saying that Vikings have to sign Sam Darnold, but someone's got to sign Sam Darnold. He's a starting quarterback.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm not Ben Volen. I don't decide that the guy turned into a pumpkin because he had one bad game.
Yeah.
I don't ignore the other 16.
But people will say that.
Oh,
I'm
I know
telling
they
you.
will.
Oh, yeah, right.
He was bad last night.
Yeah.
He was a big part of the reason why they lost
Yeah.
last night. He did not
Oh,
play
missing
well.
Jefferson in that end zone.
Back-to-back plays.
Oh my God.
He missed him the play before that
I know.
too, under the goalpost. He threw it
Yeah.
over his head.
I know. That was too high. But at least that one, he had guys in front. The other one was just just
The other one
lob it in there.
The other one was pitch and catch.
Yeah.
I don't know how he missed that.
Anyway, sorry to but that was.
Well, this is what we do.
I know.
We're talking about Ben
football.
Johnson.
Yeah. So we are awaiting a 1:00 press conference with Robert Kraft, where he's going to address the situation, and we think take questions from the media. We'll cover that live on this show, so you don't have to leave this show when that goes live. So that's 1:00, 1:05, whenever it is, we'll go to that live, right? Matt Morrell, you're all set? You ready to go? Okay. I'm sure he's going to have like an opening statement, and then he'll probably take questions.
No, Robert Kraft, not Matt Morrell.
Yeah, Matt Morrell. Matt Morrell. So, all right. So let's get to some of your calls and emails while we're waiting. We'll start with the TPX hotline, and if I can get this mouse going, we'll start with Chris with a TIAN. What's up, Christian?
Hey guys, I'll be pretty quick. Obviously, I'm happy with the decision. Not happy, that Mayo got dismissed, and really, it never really got a chance, personally for him and the staff to have a shot, have a second year at it. I know he had a bad year in terms of media, and the team didn't get any better in players that developed, and he was put in a tough spot. At the end of the day, though, the Krafts are here to win, and I really like the statement about getting back and expediting, the process of getting back to a championship level. What I'm really disappointed in is that they won yesterday, and not necessarily that they lose the first pick in this year's draft, which they do, but for me, what it does is that it hampers them from getting good players quicker. The higher you draft, obviously, in theory, the better players you get. And it's not just about this year's draft in terms of we need a couple of guys and we'll be okay. It's going to take 2 to 3 years to do it. So you lost the ammo that you could potentially have to move around and trade and get players maybe in next year's draft, or get guys this year that maybe you trade for a T. Higgins and you can use that high draft pick in the second round or the third round. Hopefully they can still do that and maneuver a little bit. But that's where I find it really disappointing. I just think going from 1 to 4, it's just going to take that much longer to get people in the building that can really help the team. And that's all I got. I'm sure you got a lot of people on the line. And thanks yesterday for going extra long on the post game. It was
all right, Christian.
A morose,
yeah.
to use Deuce's words. Christian.
Silbert's in New York. What's up, Silbert?
Hey, how you guys doing? It's a sad day. Like, I didn't, I believe Mayo had to go, just like how like the season just progressed like throughout the rest of the season. My thing is, I don't like how the fans are like celebrating it. I understand we won yesterday, and then a lot of people didn't like that. I actually enjoyed watching the game. That's all I wanted to see, is this team to be competitive, even though they're good backups. But my question for you guys, to see how short of a leash Mayo got, do you believe, the next coach will, ask those same questions? How long will the next coach have before we saying, hey, this is not working, and we decide to can this guy and go with the next guy? And last thing, I believe Elliott Wolf is the full blame for all this, him and Kraft, and I believe Wolf should go.
Okay. It's a fair question about, are they going to be too quick with the next person?
Yeah.
And I would say if the next person has the same season that Mayo has, you got to fail fast there too. I don't think so. I think that whoever they hire this next time, I'm hoping has at least solid coordinator experience. And like I said, from the get-go, can hit the ground running a lot more so than Jerod was able to do.
Yeah.
And that he has better support than Jerod had. And if all those things happen, then you need to give the person more of a runway than one season.
Yeah.
Regardless of the record. On Wolf, listen, he's got a lot to prove too. Yeah. That was not a good year in the draft or free agency. We always ask the question, how much say did he have on the picks prior to this last year? Because they weren't good either. So there's a lot of questions about him as well. And right now he's here. But as we talked about last night, I think a new head coach, depending on who it is going to have a say in that.
I totally agree.
You know?
Yeah. I think it's a different, interesting, different scenario though coming into year 2 as you really look at the new coach. You're kind of expecting and hoping to rely on Drake May developing. And, this year I think we were saying that about the defensive side of the ball. There's some carryover there. There's some continuity coaching. We need them to be good. We need them to, be the ones that make sure we stay, above the line. And I feel like that pressure is going to a little bit be on the offense next year and Drake, because I don't know what the defense is going to look like next year, coordinators, all that stuff. I just think there's a little bit of pressure on Drake and hope that Drake can, come out firing and, take some solid steps in the second season to lead the way and set the tone right out of the gate.
If you were Robert Kraft, because you brought up Drake May and we haven't really talked about him in a while, would you have a sit down with him and say, hey, this might look a little crazy right now, but it's going to be okay, that type of thing, just to assure him?
I mean, you mean like more so than any other players?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, no,
I don't love the
I'm just
special meeting
asking.
for it. I love if this was a standard meeting that we're having with everybody that I send the message, which sounds like what they did today.
Oh, really?
Well, it sounded they had a team meeting. And
I didn't know that. So tell us about that.
Yeah, they said they had a team meeting this morning, and it was interesting because Godchild got asked, what was the content, what was the message from the meeting this morning, and Dietrich Wise, a couple lockers down, and he said, "Yo, Deech, what was the message in the meeting today?" And on to 2025, and that was it.
But who conducted the meeting?
Yes, that's my question.
I did not specify.
And they wouldn't.
Yeah.
That's
Were they asked?
You're burying the lead there. That's the headline. It's who
were they asked?
I didn't. I don't know. Not that I.
Not that I know
heard.
you said it was a scrum, and it's hard.
I know, but like that's the main question.
Yeah,
who
I'm
led
sure
that
they
meeting?
were asked. I'm sure they were asked. I mean, I you know me. I couldn't think
You can
less.
check the Twitter machine.
Someone who's in general terms, but someone had to ask. Well, who was in charge of that meeting?
Right.
Who
ran
conducted
the meeting?
Check the
Was
Twitter.
it Elliot Wolf? Was it? That's what I wanted. Was
that's-
Robert Kraft there?
That's the question.
I would
who
hope that
conducted
Robert
that
Kraft
meeting.
was there.
Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed, Fred, to your original question if you wanted to say, like, in addition to that, like, so they had a team meeting, they talked to everybody.
Yep.
I don't think I would love the optics of it just being Drake May. Like, we're going to single out this quarterback, and we're going to let this quarterback know, if you have problems, you can come to us.
It was Robert. It was RKK.
Rob. So
from
he
Mike
was-
Reese. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Addressed the team in
Good.
a brief meeting late this morning.
Good.
Okay, that's good. I agree.
I don't mean like, hey, if you have problems, come to me.
No, but
I
I'm
just
saying
wanna-
by having an individual meeting with him, it sort of lets him know that you're special.
Yeah, no,
I
hear
don't
you.
want that.
I hear you.
I want, and I'm not saying he has to have a meeting with every individual player, but can we have like a group that
Yeah.
maybe he meets with, the captain,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
captains
Yeah.
and other, like obviously, May, I get it. He's the starting quarterback and he does, it's a cold reality. I thought this was really interesting. Duron Harmon yesterday, when we were talking in the pregame show, I asked him some questions about locker room dynamics in terms of these games, these quote unquote meaningless games, and who plays, who doesn't. Is there ever any, animosity among fellow
how
veterans?
come he has to-
I used as an example yesterday, Buffalo, Deion Dawkins is the left tackle, Spencer Brown's the right tackle. Deion Dawkins was inactive, Spencer Brown wasn't. Now, Spencer Brown didn't play, but, is there ever any, how come he gets to be inactive, but I don't?
Right.
And Harmon was pretty forthcoming. It's like, I think we all understand, like, Tom Brady is a little different.
Yeah.
And he's a little bit more vital to our
Yeah, he
team's
said there's levels.
our overall success and,
Yeah.
and how that plays out. And I think that players in general understand that. So I get that May is the quarterback, and the other players understand that. I would rather it be with like a group of captains.
Okay.
And then maybe like
or a group of people are going to be
eight
foundational
or 10
players.
other veterans.
Foundational players.
Like May.
Yeah.
And I use the word veteran not necessarily in experience, but he's your starting quarterback. So
Yeah.
you know that.
So I guess my point is, whether it's May and like you said, I want them to go into this offseason at least with the idea that it's going to be okay. We've got this covered. You're going to come back and we're going to have, it's going to be a well-run, well-oiled organization. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Just stay in shape, get your mind right, take some time off, decompress. but be ready because we are going for it next year.
I think that's like to me the message of it happening so quick. I mean that's a positive as far as the players saying this isn't acceptable, and that and it's hard for Drake. It's his first NFL season. He has nothing else to really compare it to. But I think the message this morning is that look, we want to win football games here, and we're not going to just stand on business because it's going to be difficult to hire a whole new staff. Like this was unacceptable this year, and we're moving on right away. So I think in that regard, hopefully Drake takes that message and. Like I said, he needs a big offseason. He needs to lead this team next year, and he needs to be one of the guys that, along with the new coach, holds them to a higher standard this year.
Yep. Let's see. Phones are lit up. We'll go to first Evan in London. What's up, Evan?
Oh, hi, Fred. It's Adam.
Adam. Okay.
I'm going to be the first fan for Paul to kind of put in the check mark about what the fans thought. I know Vrabel is the people's choice due to his, head coach experience and his history with us. But do you just think that a clean break from the whole dynasty Patriots way is kind of the best thing now? I mean, I'm prepared to be wrong, but I kind of wonder if I know that obviously Ben Johnson's going in for interview, but is a tight pants guy kind of the way to go now that the way the league is going? Like you guys said at the start, obviously he's got to prove his credentials and tell us what the vision is and who he can bring in. But I just start to wonder, is it kind of best if we enjoy the years that we had, but go in a new direction? But I'll take it offline, guys, but thanks very much.
No, Adam, sorry. It's a good point that I've heard before, like a clean break from the dynasty. Someone who their frame of reference isn't that era and brings something totally fresh into the building. And, I know we talked about this last night, Mike, and you were like, why do we need to, forget about all of that? Why? What's wrong with all that stuff? And I hear that, too. Yeah. But that is a line of thinking that there needs to be a clean break. Let's get somebody in whose success isn't tied to that, so they're not constantly falling back on what was done back then.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why I like Vrabel, because he has obviously he's a Hall of Fame player for us here, and so there's a familiarity, but it's not like he was only with Bill and only understands Bill's coaching method. After Vrabel, I would agree with just the general point of, I mean, look, the drafts have been really rough. I don't know who you're pointing at, but a lot of the same guys are here that have been picking players for the last few years. That, to me, you want to talk about turning things upside down, I'd look at the scouting department. I'd look at them, being able to bring in some new blood, some new perspectives on that. And, I think that's what excited me about Elliott Wolf last year, was that he felt a little bit like an outsider at that point. I know he's been around for a couple years and probably had input on the draft, but even still, I
could be sold on Vrabel because he's the experience in the other organizations, his time in Tennessee, Houston, and to a lesser extent Cleveland, kind of gives you it's not just Bills. He's not a Bill tree guy per se, even though he is a Patriot.
Yeah.
But I would put myself in the category, I do want a clean break. So if you can sell me on Ben Johnson or somebody else, I think I would be willing to listen to that. But I do like the fact that at least Vrabel is not just the same old, same old.
He's not, and we know he's his own guy.
He is his own guy, and he didn't learn coaching necessarily under Bill.
Right.
He was a player under Bill.
Yeah.
He learned coaching in other organizations where, McDaniels and Patricia, they went to other organizations to run them, to be the head coaches after being under Bill. This is different.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I don't even know if Vrabel runs the same defense that Bill really ran. I don't even know schematically how much crossover there is there, but
I leave that to you, all 22 Cowboys.
I just think though it's funny. It's the same thing with the draft. It's the same thing with free agency. You're kind of a prisoner to who's available, and of course Mike Vrabel's the obvious choice, and then Ben Johnson gets thrown in the mix as the offensive coordinator who's really hot right now, but. There aren't a lot of choices. There aren't this guy, this guy, this guy.
I saw Bobby Slowick interviewing, one of I think the Jets. I saw today. He's
Aaron Glenn's out there.
Aaron Glenn's been requested for a couple of teams, and we talked about Sweet Lou. Is it Inarumo?
Yeah.
Was let go by the Bengals. He's a well-regarded defensive coordinator whose defense fell apart this year.
Another name I heard.
I'm talking about as a defensive coordinator, not as a head coach.
Another name I heard. He's been in the NFL and college. Is Steve
Sarkisian.
Sarkisian.
Oh,
sorry. As a possible tight pants guy,
Sure.
coming in.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't love
Time in
him.
Alabama. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what scares me a little bit and what's appealing about
He's the head
Vrabel,
coach at Texas now.
it's no matter who it is, it's a little bit scary going down this road again with someone who's never been a head coach before. And I know that that's also exciting and that's where you might find gold. But there's also man, we just hired a guy who didn't really have experience doing this. At least with Vrabel, he's done it before. He's got philosophies. He knows how it works. And that, that's appealing to me too. But again, if you take a swing on a random guy, he might be the next Sean McVay.
I prefer a new guy who hasn't had a job yet,
Yeah.
but I need to know the Fred Kirsch questions. Like, I need to know
What's the plan?
What's your plan, what's your structure, who do you have,
Yeah.
what's going to be your staff.
I need to look inside your soul.
Right. Fred, I just think I think I would feel better, Mike, if Fred were just involved in the interview process.
Me too. He's hired a lot of people.
I need to see inside your
He
soul.
hired
Hired
us.
me.
I trust him.
He hired me with a stain on his shirt.
Did I have a stain on my shirt?
Of course you did.
Izzy's in Canada. What's up, Izzy?
Hey guys, just been watching you guys.
Izzy, what
Izzy.
happened? Where are you? Izzy.
Oh,
Oh, call
Canada.
back.
I'm gonna go
Oh, there he is.
season, and I'm gonna be brutally honest. This season was a disaster, guys. I mean, it was a complete joke. I mean, you draft a guy. Look, let's just put it this way: you draft the top 3 quarterback, right? You get Drake May, and you don't start him. Like, my whole thing was, why didn't we start Drake from week 1? We know he was the guy. We know he was doing amazing in training camp. We knew that this guy has potential to be really good in this league, and we knew that. So we started Jacoby for the first 4 or 5 weeks, and then the team went downfall after that, right? There was no motivation on the players, and not to mention, I love Jerod Mayo as a player for what he did for us. I respect him. Hats off to him. At least he tried. But, I think the team just fell apart right after that comment saying, we're just a soft football team. You had a lot of these players who were on the downside. They didn't like it. We gave away Judon for a bag of chips.
No, you got a third-round pick
See,
for him.
I disagree with this call in general.
Yeah.
I mean, other than the season's been a disaster, I agree. I think everybody agrees with that, and I think Robert Kraft agreed with it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we wouldn't have made this move.
Right.
But
Right.
I mean,
But
they
the
won more
point
games with
is,
Brissett than any other quarterbacks.
Yeah.
I know that's not
but-
saying much, 2-1.
But I do agree with Izzy. I think they should have started Drake.
I think they should have too, but I don't have any illusions
they
that
should have started Drake.
the record would have been worse,
We
not
started
better.
Yeah, nothing to
If
do
we
with the
had started
record.
Drake, maybe those 4 losses wouldn't have been losses.
Well, I don't know.
I think they would have been losses by more points based on the amount of times Drake May turned the ball over. Like, that's what I think they were concerned about. Brissett protected the ball. That's why they gave him a chance. Now, when they weren't winning games, even though they weren't turning it over, they made the move.
Well, I think we underestimate, Izzy, and thanks for the call, 'cause I think what we underestimate and might have been behind the thinking of not starting May right away and putting in Brissett is these coaches were trying to figure things out too.
Yeah.
And let's at least have an experienced quarterback in there while we figure out how to call plays.
Do you remember how that
or how to
Cincinnati
call
game
defense.
unfolded? Like, do you remember? Like, I know everybody looks at this game with like such reverence now. Like, do you remember like the amount of times that Jacoby Brissett miraculously avoided disaster in that game?
Oh yeah, escaping pressure.
Like, now I understand
Similar
that
to
you can
Ramondre.
make an argument that maybe May is able to run more, like, and get more yards. But doesn't it stand to reason, based on the 11 games you watched Drake May play, that he'd have turned the ball over a couple of times in that game?
Yeah. And that was as clean a game as you could imagine for the Patriots.
And again, Izzy, Fred and I are with you. I think Mike as well. Like, I would have started him from week 1, but I had no illusions on this season.
Yeah.
And I do not think their record would have been better had he played every game.
No.
He went 1-9.
Yeah, that had nothing to do with
I'm not counting the other 2 games that he
winning games was not my reason for starting
No.
him week 1.
Like, I mean, you can make an argument that the best quarterback performance they got all season was yesterday.
Yeah.
You can make that argument. I'm sorry. Am I wrong?
Well, no, you're not wrong. At least the first half.
Yeah, but he didn't really turn the ball. I mean, I don't know who got credit for the fumble.
It was an exchange.
Was
thing.
it an aborted play?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, maybe I guess you could say he got credit with the fumble, but he didn't throw anything resembling an interception.
Yeah.
He kept the ball out of harm's way.
Turnover-worthy
Well, they
plays.
didn't want to intercept it. The other team. You have to have to factor that in.
Can I just pick? I'm not telling you that Joe Milton's don't. I'm just talking about the way that the game's unfolded and whatnot.
Yeah.
But like, I just want to scratch this one. This one's really bothering me. Like,
okay, here we go.
Now, one final nail in Jerod Mayo's coffin is that he won the game yesterday. Okay,
Yeah.
and call me sunshine.com all you want. I don't care. What exactly was he supposed to do that he didn't do?
Right.
To try to lose that game. And I'm sorry, it doesn't make any sense because I know I've talked to a lot of people and I've talked to a lot of Patriots fans. They're all in agreement that Sean McDermott did not want the Patriots to win because he didn't want him to get the first overall pick. I'm not arguing with those people if that's how they feel. This is my argument. How can you say that McDermott did everything he could to lose the game so he could screw the Patriots when he did the exact same thing that Jerod Mayo did? But Mayo didn't do everything he could to lose the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
They both emptied their practice squads.
Right.
They both played their third string quarterbacks.
Well, I've heard some people say once the Bills got that lead, just hand the ball off. Don't try to score points. I've heard that.
Who? Like who?
Fans.
Who don't try to score points?
Patriots. Like after the Bills got that lead, we scored again. To go ahead again. 17-16 or whatever.
But they got like 20-yard drives. They were kicking field goals. It wasn't like they moved the ball in the second half.
I know, but
like, what are you supposed to do? Are you supposed to ask your third-string quarterback who's trying to make a living?
I hear you.
You're supposed to say, Joe, don't try to score points.
Right. Right. I know. It's like they're professionals. That's what
The guys that were playing are playing for their livelihoods.
Right. Even Mike White was trying to complete passes.
I believe
he just couldn't.
He just stinks.
Right.
I believe he was trying. I don't believe he overthrew Keon Coleman on purpose on that crossing route.
Right. It's just.
I just don't understand how you can say that McDermott tried to lose and Mayo tried to win.
Yeah.
Based on the personnel usage that they both had. The difference in the game was your third-string quarterback played better than their third-string quarterback.
Yeah.
That was the difference in the game. Because when Trubisky was in there, it was back and forth.
Yeah.
When he left, Buffalo didn't score again.
Yeah.
Yep. Jason's in Chiba, Japan. What's up, Jason?
I think it's Chiba. Remember Jason?
Yeah.
In Chiba?
What's up, Jason? Jason.
Jason.
Oh, those tsunamis. Get you
put
every time.
That's not appropriate.
No?
Put another dime in. It's
All right.
Japan. It's a long distance
All right.
call.
Well, call back. We'll go to Ray in Atlanta. What's up, Ray?
It's a quarter now, Paul.
Hey, how y'all guys doing?
All right.
Hey, Ray.
Hey, yeah, I enjoyed that preseason game yesterday. That was fun. But definitely.
Okay.
Because respectfully speaking, glad that Jerod.
We're having trouble with the connections today.
He had a good run, but he got to go.
Yep.
And I look forward to the future, and Robert Kraft's speech in a few minutes is going to be a movie. Grab your popcorn because we don't know what's going to unfold. I'm trusting the journey on. It looked like it's going to be brighter days in the long run. And Joe Milton, he did his thing yesterday. Keep Drake May, of course. That's our quarterback, but keep Milton. Yeah. Because it looked like he got something there.
Absolutely, he might be your backup. I think that's
right.
not an insignificant fact. If you have a cheap, affordable backup, I think that's a good asset.
Yep,
exactly. And it was just getting out of hand with the coach. Empty promises, backtracking things, and just the overall demeanor of him. I mean, I'm not going to talk about the guy. He meant well, but he's just not right now or ever. He's just not fit for us. He'll be successful down the line somewhere. Somebody can pick him up.
Yeah, I hope so.
And he'll be great. And as far as the draft picks, I understand that a majority of people are angry about, the number one, pick, but first dibs don't necessarily mean the greatest of players at that number one. You go down the line and find a diamond or something that'll change the whole league. So I understand, that we didn't get the number one, but we just got to work with what we have to work with, and that's number 4. You never know what's in 4 or, down the line.
Yep.
But that's all I got.
Yeah.
All right.
Stay hearing and seeing y'all again.
Thanks, Ray.
Thanks, Ray.
Appreciate the call. Yep. Let's go to Dominic in New York. Hey, Dominic.
Hey, y'all, how you doing?
All right.
Yeah, so
this
obviously,
whole situation,
I kind of wait.
I feel terrible for Jerod because I put him in an untenable situation. I know that he has all the tools as a head coach to be successful in this league. He just needed more time before taking the job. In the end, I'm a fan of this team first, and now I have to go out and find a coach who can get us back to the playoffs and hopefully championships. We're open for questions.
Start with Dan Rhodes here in the front.
Robert, just when was the decision made? In your mind, when was it that you felt you needed to let him go?
This whole situation evolved, but I'd say over the last month, I went back and forth. And I don't know, in my life and my business, I make certain decisions. I know when it's right, and it just happened. And it was very hard because the personal relationship I feel for Jerod and the human being he is, and I felt guilty I put him in that position. But we're moving on.
Tom Curran on the left.
Hey, Robert. What will happen with, for instance, the personnel department? What decisions will be made with whoever the next coach is, having the latitude to bring in his own players, his own scouting staff, his own coaches?
Yeah, we'll wait till we bring that coach in, and he's obviously he's going to have big input on who the players are and who the coaches are. It'll be his decision. So
At this juncture, would it be status quo for everybody on the staff until an individual is found?
Yes. We'll let him, look, we move fast, and we're going to let him make those decisions.
Robert, I know that you don't make snap decisions, so I was wondering, at what point during the season did you sense something was not right? And if you could expand on that, what caught your attention that something wasn't right?
Well, in the important decisions in my life, I've always said I measure 9 times and cut once. And this was one of those situations. I guess the main thing for me is I felt we regressed. The high point of everything for me was winning in the Cincinnati game. And then in mid-season, I just think we started to regress.
Robert, how significantly has fan reaction to the product on the field and to Jerod specifically played into your decision?
Well, I'm the biggest fan, so I understand. And, since the day we bought this team and I realized what a privilege it was and how lucky we were as a family, that this is the only business we're involved in where I see ourselves, we don't own this team, it's owned by the fans of this region, and we're custodians of a very special asset of the community, and that's why that helps me try to make decisions that if it was just personal, it would be different.
Andrew Kelly.
Robert, aside from yourself and Jonathan, who will be involved in the head coaching interviews, and what traits are you looking for?
Well, we'll have Alonzo Highsmith and Elliott will be involved, and we're going to try to understand who can help us best get back to the playoffs.
Robert, does that mean Elliott and his staff are going to continue on, or will the coaching hire also impact your front office?
We are looking for people working together, and they will be staying on.
Robert, when you say that the situation was untenable, what about it specifically did you find untenable, and how will that influence how you approach this search?
I don't like losing. I don't like losing the way we lost. And just things were not developing the way we would have liked, and it was time to move on.
Robert, how big of a search do you plan on how big of a coaching search do you plan on conducting?
Well, we want to interview as many people as we can that we think can help us get to that position that we want to be in. So we have put out and requests, and Stacy will be filling you in on that.
Robert, thank you for taking our questions. Appreciate it. Is Mike Vrabel at or near the top of your list? It seems to be the talk.
Before I make a comment like that, I don't know all the people involved, and there are some wonderful people that we've heard about, so I'd rather respond to that after I've seen everyone.
Robert, can you speak a bit more to the timing of this? Did Jerod know before the game?
Where are you?
I'm right over here. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. I was wondering if you could speak a bit more to the timing of this. Did Jerod know before the game that this would be his last game coaching?
No.
I know this was very difficult for you to sit down with him. How did he take it? How did he respond? Was he shocked by the news?
He was a man. Look, it was one of the more difficult things I've had to do in my life because I had such affection for him, and I believe in him, and I really do believe he will go on, and as he gets more experience, he'll be successful. It was not easy. He was a gentleman and accepted it that way.
Robert, this is going to be very expensive. Buying out a coaching staff, bringing in on new coaching staff, perhaps it goes to the personnel department. You also have $120 million in cap space this year, the most in the league. Will what you spend on this transition affect anything that you spend on players this offseason?
Yeah, the answer is no. We've always had a situation where we spend to the cap, and if we go over we have never told any coach or limited the spending. The only thing we've said is if you exceed the cap, we like to see it leveled out over 3 years. And, so that we never get way out of hand. But spending to the cap or above the cap is not, we want to win. That's our priority first.
Chris Gasper, on the right-hand side.
Hi, Robert, back here. How are you? You guys were told this was a multi-year rebuild, that it wasn't going to turn around in 1 year. You said you believe in Jerod, you think he'll be better with more experience, so why not let him get that experience here, knowing going in this was a multi-year process?
Yeah, from my point of view, I just thought we had a rough year last year. It was not 24, 23. And going through 2 years like that, and then seeing where we were this year, and especially the second half of the year, just made me feel we weren't going in the right direction. And I don't want to go through this next year, and we're going to do what we got to do to fix it.
Which Stearns in the very back.
Robert, is there one quality when you go through this search with a new coach that you'll be looking for over everything else? Is there one quality, in your opinion, that will help lead to you getting back to being a contender and playing for championships?
No, it's really a composite. I mean, you need someone who players can relate to and respond to, but they need to have a team around them that has product knowledge, in-game adjustments, knowing what their system is, just a lot of things coming together.
Robert, we saw Jonathan very animated during the Cardinals game on television. How much was he involved in this decision, and how is he going to be involved in this decision about who your next coach will be?
Well, for over 30 years, he's been with me in most decisions I've made in my life, surely business ones that are important. So he will continue to be involved with me.
Hi, Robert. Thank you for taking the time. I was just curious. We know that you addressed the team this morning. And a lot of the players were very on board with Jerod. They really liked him. What was kind of the reaction from the players in terms of this decision?
Well, I didn't get a chance to really interact. Believe it or not, we had some very important outside people coming here today on something unrelated to the Patriots. That's why we scheduled it this day a while back. And I spoke to them about how I felt about Jerod and what I tried to convey here today earlier.
A couple of final questions. Doug Knight in front row.
Robert, did you have any input with the coaching staff about how to handle the final game of the season with the number one overall pick at stake?
Did I have?
Did you have any input? Did you talk to the coaching staff about how to handle the game?
No.
Tom Curran. I think this is the last question.
Hey, Robert. I get number two. The personnel department this past year in free agency didn't really have a banner year, and also in the draft. And Elliott and some of the other individuals there, Matt Groh, have been part of the personnel department for a number of years. What is it that stands out to you about them that they should continue forward in the team building when the roster is not great?
Yeah. I think that the department evolved a lot, and a lot of things were changed. We changed our grading system this year and have done things. Our drafts have not been good for a while, and that's not, if you want to compete long term and be good in this league, you got to have good drafts, because those rookie contracts allow you to go out and get the people you need to surround people. Looks like we lucked out. We maybe have two quarterbacks. But I think we'll hopefully see a big improvement this year. Thank you very much. I appreciate you all giving us the time.
Okay, that was Robert Kraft answering questions. A lot to digest there.
I don't think it was an easy decision. You know,
No.
I mean, we all could have imagined that, but you could see and hear it in his voice. See it
Yeah.
on his face and hear it in his voice.
I mean, the first thing he said was how badly he felt for putting Jerod in this position.
Yeah.
And I
I
think
mean, you can't get more accountable than
No.
that. This is
Yeah.
on me. I put him in an untenable situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that needed to be said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That stood out. I mean, that seems like that was kind of the centerpiece of the whole thing. I mean,
Well,
a very short statement.
Yeah, I don't know if that was of the statement.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. But as we got into the questions, I thought it was interesting on the Elliott Wolf question. We heard a couple things that, you know, the coach coming in will have a lot of input, but that Elliott will be staying.
Yeah, he was asked a question. I think Tom Curran's first question was the state of the personnel department.
Mm-hmm.
And the answer was, we're going to leave that up to the new coach. And obviously he's going to have a lot of input on that, and we'll leave those decisions to him. A few questions later, when he was asked about who will be involved in the interview process, Alonzo Highsmith and Elliott Wolf were the two names that he mentioned that will be with, I presume, Robert and Jonathan.
Right.
Which begged a follow-up, which Karen Garigian asked, what is the state of Elliott Wolf? And I think Robert said that he expects those two to be back.
So
I'm not necessarily sure that maybe Robert didn't necessarily think personnel department
Yeah.
was Elliott Wolf.
Right.
And Alonzo Highsmith, maybe he's talking scouts and
Who knows?
and whatnot.
But the follow up, I guess, that needed to be asked from there is, if the person that you want says, "I want my own personnel," is that a deal breaker?
Yeah.
Is that a deal breaker?
Especially when Elliott Wolf and Alonzo Highsmith are leading the interviews, which reminds me
Right.
a little of
Thanks
what
for
happened.
hiring me. You're fired.
Right. Well, that reminds me of what happened with
Yeah.
Bill in Atlanta. You know, where they pull the internal coaches or the internal personnel people. None of them wanted Bill.
That's a great.
You know?
That's a great comp, Mike.
yeah.
So Elliott Wolf is going to come in. Mike, what do you think you're going to do with the personnel department? Well, I have a guy in mind. It's this Ryan Cowden.
Nope.
You know, Robert. He's not. He's not our
Right,
guy.
we don't want him. We don't
like
want
that's kind of the way it's been portrayed as having gone down in Atlanta.
Right.
You know, the Rich McKays and the is it Terry Fontenot? I think I think it's Terry. These guys all had their jobs, and they all felt threatened if Bill came in.
Yep.
Yeah.
So if Ben Johnson wants a new personnel guy, and the personnel guys that are existing that Robert seems to think are going to be here, how does that work?
Right.
Yeah. It's got to be clarified to some degree, I think. I mean, probably in the interview process itself, but you know,
Yeah.
I think you're right though. Maybe he's confusing a little bit who we're talking. Are we talking the scouting staff?
But
Or,
doesn't
you know,
that make
something?
sense that maybe he's
Yeah.
thinking of personnel department is the Cameron Williams of the world, and and he's thinking of like Elliott Wolf and Alonzo Highsmith is a little bit higher than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More of a de facto GM.
People did use front office.
Yeah, no,
Right.
I think the reporters had no ambiguity. They were
Yeah.
talking about everybody.
Yeah.
And I think Robert's answer may have been sort of I don't know, clouded a little bit. Maybe he was confused as to which elements he was talking about. I don't know. I don't know. I shouldn't speak for him.
Yeah.
But it's gonna. I think it's an interesting dynamic.
But it is odd, two people who could lose their job in a new regime are the ones going to be involved in the interviews.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know how that's going to work.
Well, like I said, I think that there was two different answers to that question. He said specifically that those two guys are going to be here.
Yeah.
Highsmith and Wolf will be here.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to that, he said he would leave the personnel decisions to the new coach. So I don't have any other way to extrapolate out of that as to saying that he's not talking about Wolf and Highsmith when he's talking about the personnel department. But I don't know that.
and then the other thing is, well, if Wolf and Highsmith weren't involved, is it just Robert and Jonathan? I mean, it's a tough situation.
I told you Fred Kirsch should be there too.
Well, I don't know. I don't have time. I have to do PU.
I don't have time. I don't have time.
I have to do PU. And
So, Ben, can you come at 2?
Yeah.
We'll be done at 2.
Hey, you want to come on the show, Ben?
And that, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll
It's
see
the
if the fans
world's
like
original.
you. We'll
Yeah.
do a little,
Yeah, we'll
test.
do a fan poll while you're here.
Test.
Evan's here.
Hello. There's no song.
Well, it's not really back from practice.
We're just not. There's no practice, right? Yeah. I guess. But where are you back? You're back from the press conference.
Press conference.
Packed house.
Very packed house.
Yeah.
One of the more packed houses I've ever seen. At least in that workroom.
Were they passing microphones around?
They were passing microphones.
Thank goodness.
The questions came through crystal clear.
Yeah.
Yep, they were passing microphones, and I thought that his opening statement said it all. And I commend him for falling on the sword a little bit there, because I feel like that's how we all feel about this situation. He just wasn't ready, and then they put him in this position.
Put him in an untenable situation.
Yeah, and he said it perfectly. So I thought that there were some interesting other points from the questions, but that's the bottom line right there.
Yeah, there it is right there. I'm looking at my shows. This whole situation is on me.
Yeah.
That's how we opened it up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Couldn't be any more accountable.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
So once you got into the questions and answers, we're still a little bit confused about the process and the personnel department and how that's going to work. If a coach comes in and says, I want my own people, is that a deal breaker?
I don't know. It definitely sounds like Elliot Wolf will be back. He said he's staying on, so in some capacity he will be back, and he's going to be involved in the interview. So I would think that for right now, he's their personnel guy. And moving forward now, the question that I have, especially if it's an experienced coach, Mike Vrabel, for instance, would you then give that coach control of the roster?
Right.
So maybe Elliott's picking the players, but when we get down to brass tacks in training camp, the 53 is up to that coach. Now, you probably wouldn't do that with a first-time head coach, but maybe somebody that you felt was comfortable in that role, doing that moving forward to maybe pivot that away from Elliott a little bit.
It's not uncommon in this situation for a personnel staff to stay on until after the draft, and then the new regime makes its decision about gutting it or because there's a lot of work that's already been done to get ready for the draft and free agency that you don't want to just throw it out the window.
Yeah, I mean, all the live scouting's already been done. Obviously,
Yeah.
all these college teams, for the most part, unless you're in the playoff, are done with their season. So all the in-person exposures, that's all already, the hay's already in the barn there. So a lot of that type of stuff is already graded out at this point.
And it's fair to wonder, if a personnel department knows they're just going to get S-canned once the draft is over, what's their motivation for, doing a good job? But
it's their livelihood.
It's their livelihood, and it's their reputation. So they're not going to half-ass it. They want the team to have a good draft because I was involved in it.
It would look well, yeah.
Right. So there is
Look good for
motivation for even if you think that you're going to lose your job after the draft, to still do your best up until that point.
Yeah, I thought it was telling towards the very end. He mentioned the quarterbacks. And as much as we can get on Elliot Wolf for the rest of his offseason last year, when you hit on the quarterback, usually you get some time to fill out the roster around the quarterback. You don't normally see a personnel guy that drafts a franchise quarterback in Drake May and then gets one and done immediately after that.
I would agree.
You tend to see that kind of come to fruition a little bit, and let's see what he can build around it. And then he made the joke, but I think he was kind of half serious about Joe Milton.
Maybe we have two.
Yeah, how well he played yesterday, and that being an asset as well. So if you give this coaching or this front office essentially two quarterbacks, 1.5, let's call it, with Milton.
But if he could be your backup, there's value to that because it's a cheap backup, and you don't have to spend, $5-10 million on, a Jacoby Brissett
type, right?
And we probably won't find that out until like OTAs, minicamp ish. But I wouldn't expect them to sign a veteran backup until then because they're going to assume that he's the backup.
Yeah,
and I think that is a good asset to have.
Give them the second reps.
Gives you some extra, but it gives you some extra money to play with. That other teams don't have that luxury.
In the interview that I guess Henry McKenna did with Wolf, one of the quotes that stood out to me was Wolf said, "We expected more internal development for the players," and to me that was that's just throwing all the assistant coaches under the bus. And So I don't know if you took it the same way.
Yeah, it's a fair point, and you certainly can look at guys from these last couple of draft classes. I think Keon White's a perfect example. Like they probably thought from a front office perspective that Keon White was going to emerge this year as a real impact player for them, and he went backwards. So you look at that type of thing, just all throughout the roster. I mean, we've talked about all the guys that they've brought back on extensions that have regressed.
Yeah.
From this year to last year. So all that is, I guess, fair. I mean, we'll see if a different coaching staff can get it out of those players, and then we can kind of evaluate.
That's a great point on the development part. We keep talking about draft and development, and you mentioned, they thought that Polk was a plug and play kind of player. Yeah. That's an element of it that I think hasn't been talked about as much. Is all of those guys that they re-signed seemed like they were better players before. So that's like a lack of development too. And you want to say that maybe there was a shot being taken at the coaches? Maybe it's rightly so.
Yeah. So, I mean, job one, once you get that head coach in here, is what's his staff?
Yeah.
Who are you getting in here to develop players? So the better the network that coach coming in has, the better off you're going to be, because what are you going to have, a whole round of interviews for a whole staff of coaches? Yeah. I mean, by the time we're finished, it'll be 2025 season.
I mean, that's what we did last year.
I know.
And that was really what stood out to me in the very beginning with Jerod, was just how little connections he had to build a staff.
Right.
And so a lot of these guys, Vrabel, Ben Johnson, like these coaches are going to come with a plan. This is going to be my OC. This is going to be my DC. We'll fill in the position coaches maybe as we go a little bit, but they're going to have guys that are going to come with them to these destinations that they're interviewing for, and it always felt like they were flying by the seat of their pants a little bit with the coaching staff.
I don't think you're going to have 12 interviews for an offensive coordinator.
Right.
I think that it's reasonable to expect both of those guys that Evan just mentioned will have guys in mind for at least the coordinator roles. Now, maybe you got to fill out your staff, because I don't know if Ben Johnson has 15 guys that are at the ready if he gets a job, but I'm sure he's thought about it. He's been a hot commodity for a couple of years now.
Ben Johnson comes in here, I want him to be the coordinator, offensive
Well,
coordinator.
yeah, but
you still need an offensive coordinator.
No, you don't.
You still need a staff.
You need a staff, but you don't.
You still need an offensive coordinator. Someone's got to be the offensive
Sean
coordinator.
McVay doesn't.
Yeah, he has an offensive
But
coordinator.
he's the guy that calls the plays.
Yeah.
No, I know, but you still need an offensive coordinator.
You need a guy to help you. You need a guy to help you coordinate the offense. But he can still be the OC. I don't know what that's going on in there.
Can I go to something that's
Gary
always,
liked that one. No.
Something that's always kind of baffled me, the whole personnel thing, and all the work has been done in the draft and blah blah blah. And I agree with you. There's a lot in it for the guys that are picking players to do it well, because they want their next job if they're going out the door. Let's go back to what Robert Kraft said. The new coach is obviously going to have a big say in the personnel department.
Yep.
So let's just say that Ben Johnson has, whoever the assistant is in Detroit, he loves. That's going to be his GM. Hasn't he done a lot of work on the draft too?
Right. Oh, yeah.
You don't have to keep the existing personnel department because they've done all the work on the draft.
No, you don't have to.
And I understand that, a team might have a different grading system and maybe different players and needs that they want. But your scouts are scouting the entirety of the draft.
Yeah.
All of the players that are available.
Right.
So I'm going to guess that Mike Vrabel or Ben Johnson or whoever else is going to come in and be the next coach isn't going to hire someone Paul Perillo, who hasn't looked at one draft prospect. Scattaboo. I mean, this Scattaboo kid, I want him in round 4. Whoever gets hired as the new guy has done all the work for the draft.
Interesting question, though, Paul.
You don't have to keep the
what
guys.
amount of the scouting information is proprietary, and can you take from your current team? I'm sure he studied them, but is he allowed to take his files with him to the new team? Those kind of things.
I would say stacking and great and whatnot, but you have the knowledge of
the knowledge.
You know what I mean?
But I'm almost certain that all the files, all the database information, everything you've done is property of the New England Patriots.
See, I agree with that, but I think that you have the actual information.
Sure. Oh, yeah, you know what you've done. You know your opinions.
In terms of grading and stacking, again, the Patriots might say, well, we're really heavy on offensive linemen and we're really heavy on wide receivers, whereas Detroit might not be as heavy on those, especially offensive line. They got a great one. So maybe they're focusing on different areas, but the breadth of knowledge of the draft, I think, is
especially for the guy whose system it is. He knows specifically kind of what he wants, the traits that he's looking for, and here it might have been different, and the breakdowns and the scouting, the traits that they're looking for might be completely different than. Maybe Ben Johnson wants fast wide receivers.
Oh, really? Those exist? I would say
if you want fast wide receivers, you got to draft fast guys.
Yeah, that is why it is tempting a little bit to maybe turn some of this stuff over to the new head coach in terms of picking the groceries. Like, I don't need to go all like the full Belichick model where it's just one guy doing everything, but I do wonder, how much they're going to have Elliott Wolf and his staff that's currently here bend a little bit to the Mike Vrabel type of player, the Ben Johnson type of player, whoever it ends up being, because that we've talked about this, like that could be significantly different from a Belichick type of player.
If I'm a guy who wants to run the place, I say to him, listen, I'm okay if you keep these people, but at the end of the day, it's my call.
Yeah.
I will listen to them. I will take their input. I will value their input, and I will respect the work that they've done. But if it comes down to my way or my decision or their decision, it's going to be my decision. Yeah. And as long as I get that agreement from the ownership, then I'm okay. I'm okay with keeping the current staff. I'm just, speaking out loud. Now, I've also heard that Ben Johnson has already put out there that one of the main things he's looking for is alignment with ownership.
Yeah.
Skipping over right to ownership, alignment with ownership, that ownership and myself are aligned. So I don't know if that's a shot across the bow about I need to have complete say, below the ownership level.
Yeah. I'd also just focus a little bit on the defensive side of the ball too. I mean, we're talking so much about scheme and on the offensive side of the ball, and you wonder what a new head coach is going to look at this defense and think, it's not like a core defense has kind of existed there. It's it's kind of a bag of parts right now, I would almost say, and certainly some corners that can play man, and I think that's a great place to start from. But I also wonder, coach comes in, Vrabel, he looks at this defense. Does he get away from all, what Belichick likes to do with game plan stuff? Does he go back to just a base kind of scheme that they're going to play and they're going to try to play fast? I think that side of the ball is just as much up in the air as the offense.
I just wonder, because so far Ben Johnson and Vrabel are the two names that keep getting bandied about. Of the two, Vrabel, even though he's been at Cleveland, might have had the most time to evaluate our roster.
Sure.
And might come in on day one with a better idea. I wolfed down a turkey sandwich.
Well, he had to sit through that game last year when he got inducted, right? So he just sat and watched the game. He's got a pretty good.
Might have the better idea in day one about what he thinks this roster needs.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. I just remember last year when we went to the Senior Bowl, Vrabel was at the Senior Bowl without a job, and he was just there networking, and just talking to people, and I just feel like that year that he's had in Cleveland, I heard a lot that he was learning offense and really under Kevin Stefanski's wing and trying to learn the other side of the ball to better coach offense moving forward. And when you go down to things like the Senior Bowl, the Combine, when you're a free agent and you're going there to build connections. You're going there to network. So I think the tempting thing, and I know he didn't necessarily directly say this, but I think the tempting thing for the Krafts has got to be that there's a turnkey option out there in Mike Vrabel where he is going to come with a plan. He's going to come fully loaded with a staff, with a plan, with a program of how we're going to lay this out and how this is going to go. And there just never felt like there was a plan for Jerod. It never felt like it was...
Everything is seat of the pants.
Yeah, it just was all... none of it just felt... He never felt in control of the job. And I feel like that is a lot of why we're here.
I'd add one thing to what you just said, though, Fred. I'd add that there might have been a little bit too much attention in getting away from Big Bad Bill Belichick and doing things opposite of what he did, or specifically being motivated to get away from what he did, even if it necessarily wasn't what we're doing to help the football team. I compared it to Cam Newton last year. Cam Newton replaced Brady for a year. It was kind of a weird year. It's kind of what's happened with Jerod and Belichick. But I think to some extent maybe that stuff has been kind of flushed away. And the new guy's going to come in here without the shadow of Bill Belichick's hoodie, looming over everything, how it was done last year, X, Y, Z. He can come in a little bit more with a blank slate, kind of like Mac Jones got. It wasn't like Mac's got to replace Tom Brady. They took some of that out of the way with that Cam Newton year.
Just an aside, is Vrabel's son on a team these days?
Tyler?
I thought he hooked up with an NFL team.
I thought he was on a practice squad, but I don't
kicking around a
remember.
little bit.
I think it's. Yeah, I think I heard his name on a broadcast
There was a way
at
we
some
could look
point.
that up.
Yeah. BC kid, right?
Yeah. All right, let's go to the TPX hotline. We'll start with Kelvin in Florida. What's up, Kelvin? Kelvin. Oh, he's not there. All right. We'll go back to Japan, where Jason is giving it another shot. What's up, Jason?
He is not.
Hey, how's it going, guys? I'm not actually in Japan anymore, but I figured you guys know me from that era.
Okay.
I remembered.
All right. Well, where are you now, Jason?
Keene, my hometown. Keene, New Hampshire.
Keene, New Hampshire.
Keene, New Hampshire.
Oh,
All right.
I know
Do you
Keene.
know, fun fact, the main street
Tell
in
us,
Keene,
Cliff
New
Clavin.
Hampshire is the widest main street in America. Did you know that?
Fun fact.
It's a fun
Second
fact.
in
Just
the
a fun
world,
fact.
Actually, behind Paris.
In America, right? Yep. Okay.
Right, second in the world behind Paris, though. So
Second in the world.
I mean,
we got
that's
going for us,
legit.
too.
Wow, that is legit.
It's a fun fact.
They don't have the
So,
architecture.
hey, look. I just don't... So, it's an odd thing where I see how we were doing this year, and, it was terrible. I hated the results. I also kind of don't want to be this team where we're just churning through things, and I listened to the Robert Kraft press conference there. He sounds really sincere. He obviously loves Jerod, and
Oh, boy.
I want to see the belief in the decision that they made.
All right. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
the
so I think
cell coverage in Keene
I got
isn't
an
that
idea
good.
of what Jason's
Not so
talking about.
keen.
Like, he's talking about understanding the move had to be made or what that was made, but doesn't want to be one of these teams. And I hear this a lot.
Who does?
Right, but I hear this a lot. Like, you don't want to start cycling through coaches because then you become one of these teams. Well, this is like a sad and sorry reality, but you're one of those teams. Like, I believe they're 16-35 in their last 41, whatever, 50, whatever many games that is. Math is tough. 51 games. They haven't been successful in a long time. Like, you have to go back to 21 for their last winning season. So you don't have to be one of those teams, quote unquote, that cycles through coaches every year. But does that make you feel better if you go 4-13 in back-to-back years, but you keep the same coach? Because it doesn't make most fans feel any better.
Yeah.
I also feel like this is to avoid becoming one of those teams habitually.
That's what you're trying to do.
Because I feel like Mr. Kraft knew we were probably going to be right in this position again next year, or similarly in this spot next year. And so if we didn't make this move now, we're just going to be making it 12 months from now.
You need to fail fast.
Right, and you need,
Right.
yeah, exactly.
And it wouldn't make me feel any better to go 8-9, 4-13, 4-13 if I had the same coach in those 3 years.
Yeah.
Or I made a coaching change and then it did. Like to Evan's point, you go 4-13 in year one, and then maybe you go 5-12 the next year. Like, I don't feel better about it because I didn't fire the coach after 1 year.
Still just speaks to specifically Jerod, where there wasn't like, well, yeah, he had a bad year, but we've seen him do it before. Like, he's got to get a year to get what he's done in the past in place, and
That's
that
why
just
Bill
doesn't
got
exist.
the time that he got.
Right.
It just like what's the move? Like, what's the pivot? So if you keep Jerod and you fire AVP, so who's the OC that's going to magically come here and fix it all? That has a relationship with this regime, because Van Pelt was 12 out of 12, right? Like they had a long list of interviews that they tried to get through last year to get somebody to take the job. I guess it's a little bit more appealing now, but all you were going to be doing was rearranging the deck chairs.
And if you kept Mayo, so now you are conducting the offensive coordinator interviews again if you get rid of AVP, and it might even be harder to fill that job than it was last year, because now you just went 4-13 with the new coach. Seems like the seat was really hot for that new coach, and I don't know. I don't know how much better I could have done than Alex Van Pelt with a rookie quarterback and no offensive line, and they got rid of him. Why do I want to go there?
Yeah.
You know, that'd be an even harder job maybe to fill if you had kept Mayo.
Yeah, like if you're Josh McCown and your star is rising, you know, why would you take the Patriots OC job and have it blow up in your face in a year?
Yep. At least you know you can start Drake May in week 1. You
Although
won't have any issues there.
Yeah, or you might think that I could be the head coach of this team by October.
Right. So that was the argument. That was the argument I made to that on Felger and Maz when I was on my shows.
Yeah.
They said all that same stuff that I just said, and that was my comeback. I go, well, you know, I don't know. If you have a lot of confidence in yourself, maybe you can angle to be the successor.
Right. Joel in Ottawa writes in at podcasts@patriots.com, and we've got a ton of emails. I want to thank everyone for sending them in. I'm all for a clean sweep and letting the new head coach pick all new staff. I think we learned the hard way. Experience is very important, especially when you don't have a niche, i.e. offensive or defensive guru type. It should be EG, by the way, not IE. I'm all for Vrabel, but also think I'm biased because of his Patriots connection. To me, the OC and DC might actually be the most important hires. He could be right there.
Yeah, I think the number one question for Vrabel is who's your OC, and the number one question for Ben Johnson is who your DC is. You know, if they're not your area of expertise, you know, who you're going to fill in. With Vrabel, you wonder, you know, how do you get an OC hired that's going to be truly innovative and truly bring this offense up to date and not run the old Patriots offense with Josh McDaniels or this Cleveland offense that Van Pelt ran. And then for Ben Johnson, you need somebody, you know, we've been kicking around the name, Wade Phillips, like for Sean McVay. Like, who is the experienced, been there for 100 years, called plays, maybe even was a head coach at one point, that can run the defense and really be the head coach of the defense.
I think, I think just having, especially if it's like a Ben Johnson, you know, first-time guy, having an experienced guy, regardless of the side of the ball. Like McDonald in Seattle is the youngest guy, right?
Yep.
He's the youngest coach, and he has Leslie Frazier on his staff. Just to and I know the Patriots try to do that, I think, with Ben McAdoo, but I don't think it's really played out that way. So I do think it's important, if you have a lack of experience, to not only have the coordinator on the other side, which we talked about a lot, but sort of an experienced, maybe former head coach, just to help be a sounding board.
Just something that popped into my head. Are you a little worried with Christian Gonzalez if a DC comes in here and is like, I want to play zone, I want to do a lot of zone, we're going to be a zone team now? You know, is that a little bit of a red flag where you're like, we got a great man cover corner, like, you know what I mean?
I mean, he can't be that good if he doesn't understand that you got a guy like Gonzalez, you put him man on man.
Yeah, I mean, it's a thought I've had about Robert Saleh, who I like as a coach, and I know a lot of people have thrown his name out there for DC, but
is he a Tampa 2 guy?
No, he's a Seattle 3 guy.
Seattle 3 guy.
So he's going to come.
Know your numbers.
He's going to come in.
Not
he's
a Notre Dame 4.
He's going to run cover 3. He's going to run quarters. They're not going to blitz much. They're going to rush 4. Like, so you're putting in a defensive system, you know, who's your Fred Warner on this roster?
Who's your front four that's going to get pressure?
Right, exactly. So if you're running that kind of system, like, you don't have the horses for that kind of system.
We don't know.
No.
It's an honest point. Like, Fred Warner, like, you want Juwan Bentley, you know, covering the seam in cover 3, like, good luck.
Marty Mapu.
Yeah, right? So you there's a lot that goes into it to me.
I would like to see him try to do that role, by the way. I'm not telling you. Please do not attack me. I'm not saying he could be
Marty Mapu, next
equal
Fred
Fred Warner.
Yeah.
Not saying that, but I do.
Fred Warner's a safety in college.
I think he's another safety.
Yeah.
I don't know if he could be sort of an athletic linebacker that could perform in those kinds of roles.
Like
I've
Mint
been
Milano.
pounding the table for that for 2 years.
Jeremiah writes in, he says, curious if you saw Booty's tweet after Jerod was announced to be fired. Booty tweeted, God bless, after the news broke. Just curious on you all's thought about what Booty said, and was there ever some indication that players weren't a fan of Mayo? Now, I didn't see the tweet, but God bless could be like God bless Jerod Mayo.
That's how I would take that. I did not see it. I don't.
Yeah, so I don't know what the content or the tenor
That's
of that.
how my immediate reaction would be that I think that was a supportive message for Jerod Mayo, but I don't know. Maybe Booty does not like Jerod Mayo. I have no idea.
The last thing I want to do right now is read in between the lines of social media posts from the players.
Can I ask you, Evan,
Or
what your impression of the locker room was? I know you were in there too with me. I said it was kind of morose and
Yeah,
depressing.
I guess, I don't know. Maybe I had a different, because you said that and the girl said that to me too after we walked out of there, that they thought it was kind of, I've never been in a locker room clean out where it was an exciting day. I've never seen it besides after winning a Super Bowl in 2019. But in a true season end, plane crash, I have never seen the locker room the day after the season ends in locker room clean out day be a happy place ever. So I thought it was pretty much the same. I didn't really feel like it was any different than any other year in that respect, and maybe that was just a bad read that I had on it, but I don't know what people expect on a day where the coach was fired and they went 4-13 and they are coming off this disaster season. Are they supposed to be doing cartwheels? So that was just sort of my read on it. Every single locker room cleanout that I have ever been in, again, besides my first year when they won the Super Bowl, has been like this. Everyone's kind of aware of the vibe.
Right.
It's not supposed to be a celebration.
Did anybody other than Brian Belichick, any other coaches? I saw Brian walk through. That was just one other question.
Yeah, Brian walked through. I didn't see any of the other coaches.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did see Brian, and obviously, I don't know if you guys have touched on it, but Drake was not in there and did not speak, and I don't think he's planning on speaking. So we also didn't talk to him after the game yesterday either. He barely played, but so we haven't heard anything from Drake May and what his whole take is on this. Not some scribes, Fred, that were not happy about that. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good for him. He doesn't have to talk if he doesn't want to. Or if he doesn't have to.
Sure.
Yeah.
I would be disappointed if I were a beat writer.
Yeah.
I want to hear from the quarterback.
You do, but I get it, and I would be disappointed too. But as a first-year player, a situation like that, I don't know what to say. What do you say? And if I can get out of talking, I'm going to get out of talking.
It's an unfortunate situation. We're all disappointed. We feel like we didn't play well enough for him, and we take responsibility for it.
Bill writes in, I've heard this argument that it's common for the personnel department to stay on in situations like this because all the work has already been done. Robert just said the drafts have been bad. We all know the drafts have been bad. So why in the world would keeping the same group of people who have made these decisions make any sense whatsoever? I don't want these guys touching this draft, not even sniff. The person the new head coach would want to bring in would, in theory, also have been doing the work on this draft class. Paul, that's your point.
Yeah.
And have a group of scouts with him that have also been doing work on this draft. The personnel department is a major issue here, and allowing them to make decisions on another draft is just inconceivable to me.
Okay, let's calm down. But I understand.
Well, why? Why should he calm down?
Well, I just think that's a little dramatic, is all. I just
okay.
But I'm with him. I understand that people are worried about the personnel department, that they don't see the path forward. And I don't necessarily disagree in a lot of ways based off of last year, but I would also just say that it was 1 year. And I don't know if I really can come here and say that I disagreed with all the approach that they had in last year's draft. Now, did it work out? Was it a home run? No. But they hit the positions that we all were clamoring for them to hit. They took the guys that they evaluated and thought were the right guys to take. They hit what I think is a home run at quarterback at 3 overall. And let's give it, right now.
And you're going to get 2 1s back when you trade him now and hand over the reins to Milton.
The rest of the draft and free agency is looking bleak.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to defend them too much, but I just think that is a little bit over the top.
I just highlight too, Robert saying they changed the scouting methodology last year. They rejiggered some of the order. I'm all aboard with this. And I think that goes to the great unknown. And you said it many times, Fred, of who was making the picks, how much input did Elliott Wolf and Matt, we don't know what that whole thing was like, how the draft was running.
Were they still working off the old system? And
was Bill just coming in at the end being like, nope, this guy, you don't know.
We don't know.
I also just think it was going to be a multi-year rebuild from a personnel standpoint. There was no way that they were going to come out of last year with a starting left tackle, starting wide receiver, starting quarterback, all across the board. I just don't think that that's realistic.
And there'll probably be questions positive people that call this offseason and say, you get a new coaching staff that we believe in, that are good coaches, and all of a sudden Jalen Polk starts to develop, and some of these guys, that maybe had disappointing first years, they
my
turn it
take
around.
from afar is, going back to those things that you're talking about that Elliot Wolf said about the development
to McKenna.
My guess is that they've been able to successfully convince people that this draft wasn't as bad as you think it is. Polk, Robinson, Wallace, they're going to be good players. We need better coaches to develop.
That's what it sounded like to me.
That's what that sounds like.
Jack in Inaba writes in. He says, message from Detroit. The Patriots do not want to hire Ben Johnson. Nothing to see there. Detroit's high-octane offense
very mean in middle schools.
Detroit's high-octane offense is an illusion. Do not pay attention to the fact that Detroit leads the league in nearly every offensive statistic. Ben Johnson is not your guy. Move along. I don't know if he's being sarcastic.
I think he's being. I think it's a little bit of both. Isn't Jack the one that used to make fun of the middle school?
I don't know. That's why I was waiting for it to go. That's right. But if it was, that's good stuff.
It is funny. There are some people in Michigan that don't like him.
What are the middle school theater departments like around here?
Yeah. That's a kind of an inside joke for people who listen to the show all the time. Go back to the TPX hotline. Con is in Minnesota. What's up, Con?
Oh.
Con, Minnesota.
I think he's waiting for you to yell it.
Oh, well.
Minnetonka, hello.
Spent a lot of time in the Mall of America.
Yeah.
Let's go to Spee in Fresno. What's up, Spee?
Hey, what's happening?
Hey.
That we're one of those teams. Comment that Paul had before really brought me down. So true. I get why the firings happened, and like many people, I'm critical of the coaches, but I think I'm in the minority who think that this might be a bad decision. I wanted to trust Kraft. He seemed really sure about picking Mayo, and then acknowledging last year that it'll be multiple years, and now all of a sudden it's like you're changing. I wonder if he's unduly affected by the fans. In his press conference, he said, "I'm a fan." Well, fans affect fans, and I just don't. That just doesn't seem. I don't know, like a great way to be guided. Maybe. I mean, why not commit to your experiment and see if Wolf can do his effing job, and see if Mayo's regime can get better with a better roster. We just don't know if what's going to come next is going to be worse.
It's professional football, man.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't think we're in the business of this isn't like coaching you,
Thanks,
where we're
Spade.
developing coaches and we're giving them 3 years to see if they can finally turn it around. There's a lot on the line here for everybody. They got to go out there and put a better product out on the field. I mean, we were at that game yesterday. The stadium's half empty. Half of it's Bills fans. You just can't have that in professional sports.
So I would say to Spee, it's not necessarily to me about the fans saying you need to fire him. Oh, okay, the fans say I need to fire him. I think the latter part that Evan just talked about, the fans are speaking by not showing up. And we've had, Fred and I have been looking every week, and we talk about that we look down, we look up at that 300 level when we're up in the box, and that stadium has not been banged out this year, and it's gotten progressively worse. That, to me, if I were Robert Kraft, that speaks to me. People don't want to watch my product anymore because it's not acceptable, and I got to find a way to make it more acceptable.
Yeah.
And stuff we don't, we can see the seats. What we don't know is, are there partners, corporate partners saying,
pressure.
I don't know if I'm going to renew.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Follow.
And it's and if nothing else, it's a business.
Yeah.
And you have to
Follow
treat
the
it- you
money.
have to
What
treat
about
it as
what
such.
about the lack of primetime games?
That's another thing.
Yeah.
And someone emailed, I'm not going to read the email, but how much did the Tavai comments hurt Kraft?
Yeah.
Again,
alienating the fans.
in a nutshell,
Yeah.
as a singular moment, not at all. But in
But
a
you add
season,
it all up.
a season full of those kinds of things, that counts.
Yeah, I was thinking about this. I'll ask you guys, if you just had the football, it was just the record and just the product that was putting on the field, but Jerod handled himself well,
He'd still be the coach.
I agree.
I think so.
I think he'd still be the coach. I just think from burn some cash on, it was just one thing after another after another. Remember in that interview, he said that they were going to win more games than they did last year?
Yeah. Oh, I've been reminded on Twitter many times.
It just one thing after another after another. I think if he had handled that part of it fine, then he would still be here.
Or at least shown progress.
Yeah.
In that, like some of the missteps and clarifications that he had to make early in the year, you didn't see anymore.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it was almost every week.
It was. I mean,
and it's the players too, like a lack of control over the players' messages from the start of the season right to the to Vi thing.
Didn't he dump his orange juice too at that breakfast that morning when he was trying to be at the owner's breakfast? I mean, I don't know. There were just, it was constant from beginning to end. There were just him stepping in it, having to walk it back, and
You need to instill confidence.
And it's funny, like
I mean, can you imagine Patton after a battle against Rommel saying, "You said it, I didn't"? I mean, come on, you can't do that.
That was
the only way.
I don't know. Like, I don't mean to pile on the guy, but like as someone that was sitting in all these press conferences, I still think the London press conference was worse.
Oh, it was terrible.
I think that was the worst one. But
I'm speaking to the players. Then speak to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Let's.
So
the
Fred,
body's still warm. I feel bad for
like,
Gerard.
I
don't like dumping on.
And that's
right
why
now,
I was
too.
going to come out.
I know, but we have to be honest.
But I want to say this because do you remember when Steve Spurrier took over the Redskins?
Sure.
So,
ball coach,
the old ball coach,
he wanted to do it differently. Like the whole like I got to sleep in my office. It's a 22-hour a day job. Blah blah blah. I was rooting for him because I thought it was refreshing that he was willing to say, I don't have to do it like that. If you do this and you do this and you do this, you can be successful. I wanted it to work, just like I wanted this to work for Jerod, because I do think that you don't have to be a cantankerous a-hole at the podium every day to be successful the way Bill was.
Right.
I think if you know what you're doing and you're buttoned down and you have everything under control, you're detail-oriented, you don't have to be adversarial.
Yep.
But much like with Steve Spurrier, it didn't work.
Yeah.
So I didn't get the example of having that guy, doing it in a different way, having it work, and it didn't work.
Yeah.
The way Jerod
But isn't
tried
it
to do
Andy
it.
Reid who said, if my coaches are still here at 11 o'clock, there's something wrong?
Well, and Andy Reid is the perfect example. He's a hard ass
Right.
on the players, but he's considered a players coach too.
Yeah, right.
He is notorious for conducting one of the most difficult training camps in the league and being really demanding of the players, but at the same time they love him.
Yeah.
They love playing for him and they feel like they have a voice with him. So I think you can do it both ways. It's not easy.
Yeah. We have a lot of emails, as I said before, but we are going to end at 2. We will be back tomorrow in our regularly scheduled time at noon. So we'll have another 2 hours to digest, analyze, dissect what's going on. Who knows the way things are going? Maybe we'll have some breaking news tomorrow. I don't know. I'm just saying.
Just throwing it out
Just
there.
saying. Just stay tuned.
I don't know.
One
What
more
happened
email.
to the off season, Mike?
That's what I was like. The queen is dead. Long live the queen. Like it's literally like, it felt like
Yeah.
2 in a row.
Yeah. One more email. Jim in Pittsburgh writes, and I can't help but be irritated that we have so much cap space. Do I want to be way over the cap? No. Do I like having crappy team and $130 million in cap space? No. There's no excuse for, I know the house is falling apart, but we have tons of money in the bank account. The personnel department stinks, and I question whether the Krafts are willing to spend the money. If they are, why wasn't the team better this year? For what is supposed to be the best ownership in sports, I don't understand how this made sense from a business standpoint. Help me understand. P.S. What really upsets me is I can't torment Steelers fans anymore. I get that. We don't have the upper hand anymore.
I like his point about not loving the fact that you have the most cap space.
Yeah.
I don't like that either. I think it's not the same, but like your whole Scarlet Letter thing about the number 1 overall pick.
It's kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't
you
like
have
it.
nobody to spend money on, but you also have nobody that wants your money.
Yeah, right.
And that's where the position they were in last year.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Mark Daniels reported that they had a pretty big offer out to Christian Wilkins. We know they had a big offer out to Calvin Ridley.
And Ayuk.
Well, once the Ridley
They
thing
couldn't
fell
even get
through.
Ayuk to talk to them.
Yeah,
Right.
like
Ayuk wouldn't pick up the phone.
They
using us.
wanted to spend money, I think,
Yeah.
on players last offseason. Nobody wanted it.
And that's the key, is they were willing to spend the money. They just couldn't. No one wanted their money.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
is there a good
that's
chance they can't spend all of it this year either?
yeah.
Well, I think you hope that between Drake and whoever they hire as the head coach, that becomes the draw. Like if you're an offensive player and Ben Johnson's the coach and Drake May's the quarterback, you hope that a receiver can see, all right, I'm going to be used correctly. I'm going to have somebody who can get the ball to me, and you draw them that way. But I mean, it's still 4-win football team.
And I know we're up against it, but does the offensive coordinator have to be a name? Does it have to be someone who's established?
Who's the head coach?
Whoever it is.
It depends who the head coach
Okay,
is.
let's say it's Vrabel.
I'd like him to be someone that people are familiar
Like,
with.
is the name of the offensive coordinator part of making this place a destination?
No, I just want to feel good about the guy that's the offensive coordinator if it's a defensive coach. If it's Ben Johnson, to your point.
I'm not talking about for us. I'm talking
need an
about for players.
Yeah, I don't think the offensive coordinators.
Yeah.
generally-
Really?
I think it's the same thing that happened. Like, you signed Austin Hooper because you had Alex Van Pelt.
Yeah.
Like, there will be guys that have connections to whoever the new coordinator is, and that will help for
Okay.
those guys.
All right.
But I don't. Do you think?
Oh, I just think it would be nice if you could kind of sell yourself on it and triangulate. This offensive coordinator is going to fit well
Crossfire
with Drake May
triangulation.
because of this. And, Vrabel's input. Like, and you can look at those three pieces, the OC, HC, and QB, and say, all right, they've got something there. The QB fits what they're going to try to do.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like. So Ben Johnson is probably the highest profile offensive coordinator in football right now, not counting head coaches that are offensive coordinators. Not to get back into your thing. So is Ben Johnson like maybe he's good enough that he would attract free agents and say, like, geez, I see what he did in Detroit. I'd like to play in that offense.
Yeah.
He could make me some money, but I don't.
Yeah.
Is there anybody else that would fall into that category?
I don't know. See,
Not
I
really.
just don't know. All right, we got to go. We'll be back tomorrow at noon, so have no fear. There'll be plenty more to talk about then. Thank you for listening to this special episode. The full Robert Kraft press conference will be available on Patriots.com and Patriots Social in case you missed it. But until tomorrow, thanks for listening.
Thank you for downloading this podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Google Play, and everywhere else you listen. Like the show? Please rate and review us. Listener comments and ratings help keep us high in the podcast rankings so new listeners can find us. Be sure to check Patriots.com for more news and more podcasts.
The world's original podcast.